Hey everyone, welcome to LatinXcellence in Iowa. Today you're going to find me with Sabra Cacho. She also went to the University of Iowa. I promise I am not doing University of Iowa propaganda. The college experience expands beyond the University of Iowa, but that is where my network is from. But I'm still super excited to share Sabra's stories and experience as an Iowan. And thank you for being here with me, Sabra.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm excited.
Great. Well, maybe let's get started and tell us a little bit about your background. Are your family immigrants to Iowa? If so, when did they arrive? And where are you from in Iowa?
Yeah, so I'm from Muscatine, Iowa, so right on the Mississippi. So my family background is my mom was white, and then my dad is Honduran. He was an immigrant. He immigrated here maybe like 27 years ago, I would say.
Wow.
I still have family coming over though. So I have like two younger cousins, one who's actually a senior in high school as well. And then another one who's going to like Muscatine Community College, who's like a sophomore. And they
Mhm.
arrived here maybe like 5 years ago. So family's still
Wow.
coming. We have like a good amount of people here kind of spread out, a lot in Iowa, Muscatine, Iowa City. And then my grandma and my aunt live in New York, and I still have a lot of family in Honduras as well.
Oh, cool. So, what was it like growing up in Muscatine? What is Muscatine like?
It's so funny because now being like out here in DC, everybody's like, "You're from Iowa." I'm like, "Yeah, there's like people of color there." Um, growing up in Muscatine was good. I mean, it was fairly welcoming. There was a large like Latinx population there too. I would say that like there's diversity that like kind of mixed, but it was still predominantly white for sure. I feel like I was tokenized a lot looking back. Like honestly, in high school, I was like, "Oh my god, it's so great!" And I look back, I'm like, "Oh wow!" Like I see that pan now. So I mean, when I was in high school, it was good. I was like treated pretty well. There was like obviously some racial things that happen. I am like a Grifuna Honduran, so my family's a lot darker. They're like Afro and also indigenous, so like a mix of like black and Mayan and things. So like I feel like there was a lot of identities that I lived at the intersection of. So um didn't really have a place that I could like perfectly fit in, but
Mhm.
I feel like I was still like fairly accepted. It was a cool little place. Couldn't get into
Mhm.
trouble. It was nice.
Yeah.
Good
Did
opportunities. So I went to like a larger high school. So
did you say can you say that word again? Grifa?
Garifuna.
Garifana. I've never heard that. And is that kind of like Honduran mestizo?
Kind of, yeah. So basically what happened there was like a slave on the Atlantic slave trade on the way to I think it was like Brazil or something. And basically the African people had like taken over, killed the captains, and like the ship literally just like landed, like crashed into Honduras. Um,
Wow.
and then I mean there was no way to get back, obviously. So
Yeah.
the Africans had gone and like mixed in with the indigenous Mayan people there. So
Uh-huh.
uh, kind of yeah, kind of mestizo, kind of like um native, but then also you had like Afro immigrants, but not like slaves kind of
Mhm.
thing. So yeah.
Mhm.
So
Wow,
I
thank you for I mean, that's really cool. I've never heard of that. Thank you for explaining it. I really appreciate it. That's so interesting. I'm gonna look into it after this. That's a cool story. Cool roots. So I guess you grew up in Muscatine and you went to the University of Iowa. What was that transition like? Coming from Muscatine, a predominantly Latinx town, to Iowa City, which is predominantly white.
Yeah. It was is interesting. I feel like the transition from high school to college, like luckily there's programs like this one, like helping for like transition. So I feel like schoolwork was actually um not too hard as far as like the community went. So Muscatine is kind of predominantly white, but there's like a good Latinx community
Yeah.
there. Um, so similar to Muscatine, coming to the University of Iowa, you had to insert yourself into places of diversity, because I feel like we went there, you kind of know what kind of people that you like to be around, or you're starting to feel that out more. And that was interesting and kind of a weird transition because before I think you hang out with whoever, where I think in college you start to get to know yourself more. You start getting a little bit more picky of like who you're trying to be around and
Mhm.
things.
Mhm.
Um, so that was an interesting transition, learned a lot about myself. And like I also love that there was that opportunity there to be like, no, I'm just gonna go hang out with all of like the people of color and the queer community and all that stuff
Yeah.
rather than being
Yeah.
like just having to hang out with whoever type of deal.
Yeah, and do you identify as queer?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. And I'm glad that you have had all these the opportunities to almost explore your identity in college and and mingle with people that were like-minded. And I think that's the coolest thing about college and even almost leaving your hometown is that you get that experience to really explore yourself as a person and your interest even. What did you major in and what was your path getting there?
Yeah, so I ended up with a major in international human rights. I have a minor in fine art, and then I have a critical cultural competency certificate. And then I did pre-law.
Okay.
Yeah, I did the thing or whatever. Um, my path there was really interesting. I actually didn't really want to go to college, but my dad was like, "I did not come to this whole country for you to not go to college." And I was like, "Right." So went to Iowa originally for art. I was trying to go for like screen printing, um, which is fun. And unfortunately, I kind of let the haters get to me because a lot of times people will be like, "Oh, if you're an artist, you'll never make money," which is completely not true. And I encourage if like you want to go for art, go and do it because you can be very successful, especially in this digital world. Um, so yeah, it was originally art, and then I switched from that to like communications because I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and that
Mhm.
it's like kind of for me that was like an easy route out. And then one thing about college is like you go through like a lot of like monumental experiences. So I went through this like big breakup, and I was like, I'm gonna figure out my life. I'm just gonna do it now. So I spent a whole night of just like searching through the University of Iowa's website and just looking through all their majors and stuff, and then stumbled upon the International Human Rights major with
Wow.
it's international studies with Carmen. I don't. Did you have Carmen too, right?
No, I didn't. No, I
Okay. Well, she's an amazing advisor. Shout out to Carmen. Love her to death. But I had like found this, emailed her probably at like 2 in the morning or something like that. And she was like totally down to meet with me in the next week. And we just talked about our interests, what she had done. And then I hopped onto that, kept my art stuff, left it at a minor because then I didn't have to take art history classes. I could just go and draw, which I loved.
yeah.
Um, and then I tacked on the critical cultural competency certificate because I just thought it was so necessary to really kind of like start to unlearn and unpack these biases that society has on people.
Mhm.
Um, then working in an international space or even in like a diverse place, like it's very
Mhm.
important to go in there with like empathy and humility,
Mhm.
and learning how to be like a better person to identities that are sometimes marginalized. So yeah, that's my path.
Wow, I love that. And I especially love all the details and how you it really like unfolded. Is really what happened. And I love how that you mentioned how the outside classroom experiences really influence your in-classroom decisions. Because they do. Um and that's what I think like I define the college experience as. I feel like a lot of people are like, oh, the typical college experience is like, joining a fraternity and sorority, which there's nothing wrong with that. And that's part of the college experience, but I think there's so much more to it too. And I think you really gave us good insight on that. So art, I love that you also gave a shout out to art and artists because I have students that are artists and art. And let's remember that there's the performing arts, there's the visual arts. There's so many different types of art forms out there that you can major in and then do really cool things later on after college. So, Sabra, can you talk about your current position and kind of what you do for students and its relation to your art minor?
Yeah, no, so I work at a community college as well. I work at Montgomery College in Silver Spring. I work at their cultural arts center there. Really cool college. It's like one of the most diverse, sorry, I'm a shameless little plug. They're one of the most diverse colleges in the nation. And working at the cultural arts center is really cool because we are all about radical inclusivity. And
hmm
it kind of just like, again, those outside things. I feel like, it's weird because when you're going through life, a lot of these times, like random stuff happens, and you don't realize why until after. And like that was kind of like with this job where I left my last position, and this one just kind of like fell out of the sky and was absolutely perfect. So we do a lot of programming, giving a platform to voices that are marginalized. So we're working on Truth to Power Cafe, I was telling you about English
Mhm.
with an accent, which is about performing arts and bringing students in, giving them like a platform um,
Mhm.
to not only experience art but be a part of it.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, I feel like I can't emphasize enough that if you're interested in art and you feel like that's really your passion, like you can find ways to make money from that. We had like a student who studied theater with us, and now he is at one of like the main stages here in DC. Like it's totally
Wow.
possible, but
Mhm.
school to still be in that art space to be all about diversity and inclusivity, and working with students is always kind of fun because I was just there.
Yeah, yeah, and that's really great to hear all of the how you apply all of these skills that you've gotten. When it being a diverse school, one of the most diverse schools in the nation, and you have that critical culture competency certificate, and you're able to apply that awareness there. And then you're also with your art minor, you're really relating a lot with the students, being an artist yourself. I think that's so cool to hear about. Um, so, I mean, you've had already so many successes, and I guess one question I'd like to ask is, what is your success philosophy?
That's a good question. These all have been good questions. I feel like I have like success in my life is kind of divvied out to two parts. One, which I think is a constant struggle, is like being a successful adult of like just doing the adult things and feeling like, oh, I have a home and I can keep my home and I pay my bills and like that kind of like normal success of
Mhm.
like I did the things, I jumped through the hoops.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would say like inwardly, how I define success is just being able to help people. And I think finding equity is like huge for me. Just making sure that the voices that are being uplifted are those that are the most marginalized, because I am a firm believer in the like all boats float type of deal.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and then I don't know, fighting for what's right, I think is a really big thing for me too. And like it's hard to measure success when you're like fighting for equality and equity, but like I feel I myself am successful when I know that I'm fighting for that every day. Of course there's times where I just like
Mhm.
hang out not doing anything, or I sleep all day,
Yeah,
and stuff, but
yeah.
like overall my life, as long as I'm fighting, I feel successful.
Great. So I know that you already touched a little bit on your identities as a Honduran Latinx person. How has that experience been with the Latinx community at large? Did you ever feel included, excluded? Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, it's another good question. I think it's been kind of hard with my identities, like being like you said, like I'm like a black Latina, first generation, like
Hmm.
queer woman. And like I feel like a lot of times society doesn't want to let you live at your intersections. They want to
Hmm.
like have you on one road and have you stay in your lane, which is like really
Hmm.
hard sometimes to like feel fully like myself, or to like fully express my identities, when it's like, no, you have to stick in this box and then we're going to ignore the rest. um as far as the Latinx community, I would say that there's been times where it's been both, where I feel included.
Hmm.
uh Especially I feel a lot of like yeah, I feel like I relate to a lot of like immigrant, like Latinx immigrant kids who like, like don't speak Spanish, but like
Hmm.
their heritage definitely impacts a lot of their like life and values and things like that. But I've
Hmm.
also felt on the outside too, because it's like, oh, my Spanish isn't exactly the same, but I'm also like black, and like my
Hmm.
mom's white, and
Hmm.
that identity is so hard, so I think it's
Yeah.
both.
No, and it's a complex, and that's why these questions are so hard, right? I think we always find ourselves at intersections, and specific intersections work well for inclusion, and other ones people exclude, right? So I think that's where you almost have to like, okay, well, you get a whiplash a little bit when interacting with others within the same community. I guess one question to kind of end of this conversation, and it's kind of like the theme question, let's call it, is what does being a Latinx Iowan mean to you? Or a queer Afro Latinx Iowan, whichever one.
I have like so much pride of like being from Iowa. Um, I love like when people are like, "Oh, where are you from?" Because everybody's like, "Oh, I'm from Virginia or Maryland." I'm like, "I'm from Iowa," and everybody stops and they're like, "Iowa." Like I said at the beginning, it's like everybody's like, I'm like, "Yes, there's like Black, queer, Latinx people in Iowa." Like whatever. So I kind of like I love that identity. I love going out and showing that there is diversity in Iowa because a lot of people just think of it as cornfields or they say Ohio.
Mhm.
Like that's the funniest thing to me when people are like Ohio.
Me too. Me too. I do not comprehend.
I'm like, you're joking, right? But yeah, I have a lot of pride. I think that it was a really good experience. I think coming out to like a metropolitan place like DC, where people are just so used to diversity and don't really bat an eyelash, I think that I was able to kind of think about my identity a little bit more critically and knowing how it operates in predominantly white spaces.
Mhm.
Um, no, I
Yeah.
love it. I have a lot of pride and good to be out though, I will say.
Yeah, no, I mean, and it's also good that you can be out and represent that there are children of color amongst the corn, right? and
Exactly.
and I think that's important too. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today and answering my questions. And I know my students are going to get some great insight from your experience as an Iowan. Thank you so much, Sabra.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And if like anybody has questions or anything, like feel free to shoot them over. I'm happy to like answer questions. I can tell them anything else that they might be struggling
Yeah,
with or
yeah.
even, like, college help too. I'm always down.